So I got a comment on my channel recently. I think it was probably on one of the MPC videos. I'll put it on the screen somewhere here. And it was basically, where are the push videos? So this is the Ableton Push, released in 2023, also known as the Push 3. It's the third generation of Ableton's DAW controller. It's a companion to their software, which they've been making for years and years, over 20 years, maybe 22 years, can't remember. I've owned every version of the Push, the 1, the 2, and now the 3, or just Push again. And this is the standalone one. And when I got the Push, I was really excited about it. My first video was kind of the frustrations of getting it set up because it didn't include an easy way to download all your packs at once. You had to go one by one by one, very annoying. And I decided to show the entire process, which some people didn't appreciate, but I had fun making. And then I pretty much only used it in standalone for the next few months. And it was my most used device for a while. And in fact, it probably became my favorite device for a while. But this thing happened to me that always happens to me, which is that I started using other gear again, and it kind of got left by the wayside. And when I did see that comment, I thought, you know what, I should jump back into using the Push. But I didn't use it the way I was using it before. You see, instead of using it in standalone, I started using it in controller mode, which is really not why I bought this thing. But if I can keep it honest with you, I would almost just recommend everyone just get the controller mode one at this point. I mean, honestly, I could just be lost in the sauce and I'll change my mind again in the future. And I did buy it in standalone because I had this idea. And basically every time I buy a piece of gear, it's because I have this idea, which is that I'm going to use this thing to finally do my live show, even though I don't do any live music and I'm always just producing music if I'm making music at all. God, can you hear my desktop? It's so loud. This is a counter argument to everything I'm going to say in this video. Desktops, great for a lot of things. Mine, bad for audio recording, specifically live audio recording with a mic on. It's fine when you have headphones and whatever. Anyway, I really did think, you know, this is the ultimate device that I will be able to take my live sets from Ableton, convert them into audio only, or just use Ableton plugins, and then I would be able to do live shows with it. But I kind of hit the same worries that I have with every other piece of standalone gear, which is that it just doesn't feel like, one, I'm actually gonna do this, because I have a whole bunch of reasons I'm not doing it, and maybe I will someday, but two, it feels like it has, you know, the same kind of capacity bottleneck that most of the other standalone devices do. I think they're basically all capable of making amazing songs, single projects, all of them. Machine Plus, the Kai Force, the MPCs, the Ableton Push Standalone, Poly Tracker, like all these devices have limitations, but if you want to make a song on any of these things, you basically can. It's probably going to be great, and most of the limitation is going to be your skill. But if you want to make a whole live set, they all feel like they're failing. Now, Ableton, hypothetically, would have some advantages. You could create the whole live set on your computer, and then you could simplify it, and you could bake it, right? You could freeze the audio and do enough things to make it not as convoluted and not as computationally complex as it might be otherwise. But then it's like, why not just get a little SP404 Mark II with some batteries in it and just trigger your instrumentals? At a certain point, I find myself looking at a sliding scale of like simplicity, like plug in an iPod and sing over your music, or try to make everything trigger in real-time MIDI and Scratch, triggering a bunch of hardware synths so that it's really clear this is happening in real life, and you're tweaking knobs, and you got a microphone, and you're hoping nothing breaks or goes wrong. And somewhere in the middle is the right way to do a live set, and I've never done one, so what am I even talking about? How am I the authority on this? I'm just explaining why I got this. And so all of this is just to say that somewhere in the middle of overthinking, I decided to plug this thing into my computer and start messing with some of the plugins that it turns out support MPE, specifically Arturia's Pigments. And when I tell you using Pigments with the MPE pads on this device is one of the coolest music experiences I've ever had playing anything, I am not overstating, I am not being hyperbolic. It's so neat and it feels like the future. And yes, there are MPE plugins that work in standalone. They're cool too, but using a soft synth I already know and like really well, like Pigments, and then controlling it in this entirely new way after just clicking a box that says MPE in Pigments, it just feels like, oh yeah, this is the superpower of this device. And it already has the other things I wanted in a Push when I made my what I would want to see in a Push 3 video, which is it has a built-in audio interface, especially on a Windows machine is so nice. On a Mac, not as necessary, you just plug it into the Mac, but On a Windows device, if you're using the default headphone out, you are having a bad time. So having an interface built in is really cool. These MPE pads are great. There's more GUI elements. It's pretty easy to map knobs and different plugins to show up on here. And it's just like, yeah, I don't know that most people need the standalone. And I love that Ableton made it so you don't even have to decide you want the standalone immediately. That hypothetically you can buy a kit for that. They may already be on sale now. I don't think they were when I first bought mine, but I got mine like the week it came out. Yeah, so all of this is to say, you know, I'm gonna just play with pigments on this thing and just show you this tactile experience. It's really fun, it's really cool, and I wanna give a huge thank you, I don't have a sponsor, just to everyone who is subscribed to the channel. It means so much. It just blows my mind that anyone cares what I have to say on the internet. Every week I'm like, whoa, people are watching my videos. This is very cool. I'm just a dude making stuff. If for whatever reason you're like, this guy rules, I wonder if he's good at music, the answer is kind of. And I have an album called There's Something Better, and you can decide for yourself. It's on every streaming service and Bandcamp, if Bandcamp's still alive by the time you're watching this. And yeah, I'd be super stoked if you checked it out, but I also get if you're like, nah man, I'm just here for the videos, in which case, check this out. All right, going to Arturia, we're going to Pigments. We're dropping Pigments into a MIDI track. We're hitting a note to see how bad this audio recording is gonna sound. Not the worst, but let's lower that. Okay, yeah, and let's say you haven't done this before, you're gonna wanna go into MIDI, settings, MPE, make sure it's enabled, and then I left everything else default. And something I realized when I was trying to map the macros, because like I said, you just hit the little arrow, configure. I tried to do the first one, I'm like, why won't it work? And then I realized I'm a dummy, because the first macro is tied to MPE. And you can see that here. I'm changing it with the position of my finger on the pad. So pitch is sliding, and velocity is at play too, but I think, actually this one I don't know if velocity is happening, but placement of finger on the pad is important. So now I'm gonna play this bad boy like an instrument. So let's try a pad. I feel like pads do a good job of kind of showing this in play. Let's try Cold Sun. So I'm changing macros and controlling MPE. Let's change our scale to, let's go F Dorian. So hopefully you're picking up what I'm putting down here, although I think I'm gonna go to minor for that, and we're actually gonna go A minor. And let's try Black Hole Pad. Okay. I think you get the idea though, right? This one's mono. And I think it's pretty easy to imagine these being used for like film scores, but I still think there's going to be, as MPE rolls out across more plugins and more controllers, I do feel like we're going to enter this weird era. I mean, at the same time as machines are going to be able to make every song you can imagine, which I'm a little annoyed about. Computers doing it without any human involvement. But that said, at the same time, we are going to have the ability to kind of make anything we can imagine with full, real human control, which is exciting. It's just fun, man. And there's so much creative like possibility and expression in it that I feel like I've barely even like tapped the surface. Like if I go to my favorites, how do I get to my favorites? Just like here, go to liked. I only have 5. Like acoustic drops is one of the ones that used to be like a default one, right? I close this. There's so much more going on. It's so sonically rich now. It's not like it wasn't before, it's just like another level. Okay, so when I was a kid, I learned how to play violin, cello, recorder, flute, marimba, guitar, whatever, piano, a bunch of different instruments. I went to weird schools, and I'm very grateful to have that experience. I was never like a pro, but having my hands on all those different types of instruments at a really young age, I think ingrained a sense of musicality into even the electronic stuff that I do. So even though I don't really know how to read music, like it went in one ear and out the other, or in my eyes and out my brain, I don't know. Even though I learned how to do that, I don't remember how to do that anymore, but I remember what it feels like to play an organic instrument like that. And using these pads with a plugin like Pigments, but presumably any plugin that has a lot of different attributes that can be affected by MPE, which is just a lot of sensitivity to what you're doing when you're playing these pads. It makes me really want to try the Osmos E keyboard. I've wanted to try that since I saw it the first time. I need to figure out how to do that probably next year. That'll be a 2024 goal. But there's just this musicality to it where it's so, you think about assigning a sample to a normal MIDI controller and then hitting keys and triggering that same sample, like, you record that and then you're like, you know what I mean? Except it sounds like good-ish, not like that. And then you think about, what if a synthesizer was playing that sample at the same time it was creating like an FM sound, at the same time a different form of synthesis was happening, and the three of them were tied to various LFOs, and then the LFOs were tied to the pressure of your finger on a specific pad, and that was per note. And then it's like so rich. And you could have one preset essentially be the entirety of a song, and you could play a song with just these pads and like a single preset and sing over it, and that would be a potentially compelling music performance. Have I talked myself back into live performance? I don't know, but my whole point here is that I do think controller mode is underrated. I think using this with Ableton is underrated. I have been so hardcore, I'm gonna make everything in DAW-less gear, export the stems, and then that's when it becomes DAW music, is when I made the song almost entirely. And I'm really leaning back towards, there's absolutely a place for a hybrid approach, and being super orthodox about it has to be this way or it has to be that way when it comes to how I'm going to compose my music in software or hardware with software on it. At the end of the day, you should just do what makes you excited, what feels the best, what is the most inspiring in any moment. I think it's good to have options, but I will say if I was gonna go back, and I didn't run a YouTube channel, and these are two really important points, but if those were true, I was gonna go back in time and rebuy this, and I didn't have a YouTube channel, I would super get the controller version. I would get the controller version, and if I didn't have anything else, you know, let's make it even more of a zoom out challenge. If I was just starting from scratch today, I would probably buy the Push 3 controller version. I would find a good price on a 1 terabyte, 16 gig of RAM M series Mac. That could be an M1, an M2, an M3. I don't care, it could be an Air, a Pro, whatever. Preferably a Pro, like preferably a laptop in my opinion, just for that portability. I'd probably get the standard version of Ableton. If I was still a student, like I was when I bought it, I would use a student discount. I would wait for the half off sales or even bigger than half off sales for the Arturia V collection, and for the complete collection, I always bought those on half off sales before they were given to me. Shouts out to being a YouTuber and to you for watching for that even being possible. Although I did pay for this copy of Pigments, to be clear, and for this push. Nothing in this video was provided to me for free. But even still, if you don't ever want to touch a computer and you really want to use Ableton, those feel oxymoronical to me, but standalone push is cool. And if you want to take your live sets away from Ableton or away from the computer and you think you can get that all done in just the hardware available in the standalone model, probably some value there. But for most people, I think it would benefit a lot more just from the controller version and a good portable computer. Probably the same thing is true for Machine. Probably the same thing might be true for MPCs. I love standalone gear, but man, being able to control plugins I already really like on a really powerful machine that's making its presence known by not shutting up, it's a cool experience. And yeah, I don't think this being cool means that the standalone version doesn't matter, but this is really cool. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see you soon, probably next week. And yeah, I don't know. I got nothing. It's been a really long, kind of rough week, and I'm glad it's the weekend for now. All right, bye. Oh yeah, check out my album. I don't know. Okay.